Welcome, everybody, and thank you for attending today's virtual event for our Human Trafficking Awareness Training Initiative. I'm Tucker Ferguson, Austin District Engineer. Some of you had the opportunity to attend last year's kickoff event. We're continuing those efforts by discussing specific ways that we can combat this very real issue together. Men, women, and children are being forced into sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And the unfortunate truth is traffickers are using our highways to transport them from place to place. Today we'll be discussing how to spot the signs of trafficking and what actions to take as it relates to our transportation industry. But first, let's watch this special message from Governor Greg Abbott.
This is Governor Greg Abbott. Nothing is more important than the safety of all Texans. That's why the state of Texas is committed to combating human trafficking. This past session, I signed more than 20 laws to crack down on human trafficking and to support the survivors of this heinous crime. I want to commend the Texas Department of Transportation for leading this human trafficking awareness program. And I want to thank all of you for participating in today's training program. Together, we can deliver justice for survivors and bring an end to human trafficking in Texas. So thank you for what you're doing. May God bless you all, and may God forever bless the great state of Texas.
Hello, this is James Bass, Executive Director of the Texas Department of Transportation. I appreciate the efforts of our state leaders, such as Governor Abbott, and all of you in continuing to combat human trafficking in our state. In 2017, a study done by the University of Texas estimated there were more than 300,000 human trafficking victims in Texas at any given time. Let's think about that for a moment. This is happening around us and could happen to someone you know, a family member, a friend, or others in your community. We're talking about people forced to live in the shadows with their freedom to choose how they earn a living stripped from them. And like Austin District Engineer Tucker Ferguson said, it's happening on our highways, on our streets. That means we are on the front lines to help combat this. I want every TxDOT employee and transportation professional to know just how important you are. You can be the eyes and ears for human trafficking victims on our roadways. We can use our knowledge to recognize the signs of women and children in distress, or even a construction worker being used for labor but not allowed to collect a paycheck. Know, watch, report. That's the focus of our awareness effort at TxDOT. We need to know that human trafficking is a real problem and is happening around us. We need to know and watch for the many signs that this is taking place. And we must be ready to identify these signs and report concerns to the proper authorities. That means making the call. TxDOT has developed a number of materials to help all of us know, watch, and report. These are available to download from Crossroads and from TxDOT.gov. And we are conducting awareness activities such as this important event to empower all of us to be at the ready to help put an end to this tragic crime. Does something look out of place in a situation? Does someone appear to be unable to speak for themselves and afraid? Does something seem wrong? Remember, it's important to be sure to stay out of harm's way and not interject in a dangerous situation. But we can pick up the phone, and we can know when to do it, and we can always be alert. Thank you to all of you for being part of the solution and for your dedication to helping others.
Next, we're going to hear from some of your colleagues about this initiative and how they were able to recognize a potential trafficking situation.
Hi, I'm Mike Ariani, the Austin District Deputy Engineer. In 2019, TxDOT joined the Office of the Governor, law enforcement agencies, and industry partners in a statewide effort to raise awareness, increase vigilance, and reports signs of human trafficking. As a part of the On the Road to End Human Trafficking campaign, we hung posters and restroom stall signs in travel information centers and rest areas. We're expanding this program by distributing placards and stickers to be placed in our TxDOT Hero vehicles. These should serve as reminders of the useful information you received today. The goal? To learn about all forms of this crime with a special focus on labor trafficking, to be able to spot the signs and take action safely. Next up are two of your colleagues who experienced and encountered possible labor trafficking while on the job.
As a contract administrator, I'm used to working with our supervisors to resolve contract issues and sometimes performance issues. A couple of summers ago, I started receiving calls and emails from supervisors who had the same contractor for litter pickup. They were concerned about the condition of the contractor's crews in the field, citing excessive heat and a lack of water and resources. The crews were also telling our inspector things about their living situation that raised some red flags, that they were all living together and rode to work together in the same van.
The crew was working in July in extreme heat, and as it turns out, the superintendent would often leave for hours at a time to empty the trash trailer, leaving the crew without any way to stay hydrated. If any of them would have had a medical emergency due to the heat, the inspector would have been the only one there to help. Our inspector ended up providing most of the water and had to refill his water cooler multiple times a day. It was not an ideal situation, to say the least. Plus, the crew ended up trying to flag down every white vehicle they saw, thinking it was TxDOT. We started asking questions and found out the workers were paid $10 a mile instead of the hour. Plus, if workers had to repick sections of road, they weren't paid for it. The contractor set unrealistic goals with monetary penalties if the goals weren't met, which encouraged the crew to rush through their work instead of doing a good job the first time. It was also our understanding that many of the crew members were homeless. Most of you know what it's like to work in the heat in Texas in the middle of the summer. It's just not easy. But more often than not, they didn't eat enough food to get them through the day. The combination of walking miles in the heat, not having their own water supply, and not eating enough food caused concern for their health and safety. Once we had all the facts straight, we contacted the district immediately.
Thank goodness they did, too. Otherwise, we never would have known. The first thing we did, stop work. Fortunately, we had just watched the TxDOT training for human trafficking awareness, and we knew we needed to act fast. We spoke to our director of operations, our DE, and took statements from our supervisors. We worked together to report it to compliance. We also contacted the company's owners and Texas Workforce Commission to alert them of our concerns. We figured, even if this doesn't qualify as official labor trafficking, it's still not the right way to treat people.
So remember, it starts with us. We have the responsibility to watch, know, and report this crime. Make sure you receive this handout and either an English or Spanish wallet card as a part of today's training. Thank you for joining us in this effort. Hi, TxDOT family. I'm Mike Ariano, the Austin District Deputy Engineer. Last year, we joined forces with the Governor's Office, industry partners, and law enforcement in a statewide effort to raise awareness and report signs of labor trafficking and sex trafficking. We're continuing those efforts through today's training and other activities we have planned. Remember, we have a responsibility to know, watch, and report possible occurrences of this crime. Now I want to introduce Lavisa Matthews, a traffic safety specialist with the Amarillo District. Lavisa is a certified victim advocate trainer through the National Organization for Victims Assistance. Part of her responsibilities are to outfit travel information centers and maintenance vehicles with human trafficking resource materials. And as well, she gives presentations to her colleagues about human trafficking awareness. Take it away, Lavisa.
Hello, I'm Lavisa Matthews. I'm the TxDOT Traffic Safety Specialist in the Amarillo District. I've been a victim advocate for over 20 years, and I've worked with victims of sexual assault, domestic violence, and human trafficking. Today I'm going to discuss labor trafficking, which is one part of human trafficking, and how it relates to the transportation industry. I'll talk about what the red flags are to help you recognize a potential trafficking situation. I'll explain when, how, and who to contact if you suspect trafficking, and how being an upstander and taking action can potentially save our Texans' lives. Labor trafficking is the practice of forcing individuals to perform labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. Labor trafficking includes situations of debt bondage, forced labor, and involuntary child labor. Labor traffickers use violence, threats, lies, and other forms of coercion to force people to work against their will in many industries. Common types of labor trafficking include people forced to work in homes as domestic servants, farm workers coerced through violence as they harvest crops, hotel workers, factory workers held in inhumane conditions with little or no pay, and road crews. This data is from Human Trafficking by the Numbers from Dr. Bush Armendariz and her staff at UT Austin. It shows that 234,000 workers are victims of labor trafficking And traffickers gain $600 million a year from exploiting those victims. This is just in Texas. This graphic also shows that approximately 79,000 minors are victims of sex trafficking in Texas. A quick word about domestic minor sex trafficking. This problem primarily involves teens who are groomed online and exploited by both online and offline acquaintances, playing on the teens' interest in romance, relationships, and their sexual curiosity. The U.S. Department of State defines human trafficking as a crime involving the exploitation of someone for the purposes of compelled labor or commercial sex act through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. The legal definitions get technical, but labor trafficking is a type of human trafficking, and human trafficking is exactly what it sounds like. Trafficking in humans. If trafficking means buying and selling things or moving things so that they can be used for profit, then human trafficking means buying or selling humans, moving humans so they can be used for profit. This is the purest form of objectification, a human being seen as a literal commodity, and we're seeing it in the transportation industry. Labor trafficking is a situation that TxDOT contractors and our maintenance sections could definitely come into contact with. You have the unique opportunity to look beneath the surface of the crews that you work with. Organized human trafficking rings hire out people that they're trafficking, then the trafficker gets paid directly, keeping the victim's money. This is where force, fraud, or coercion comes into play. The trafficker will exert physical or psychological control, including physical debt, debt bondage, confiscation of passports or money. They may tell the victim that if they don't work for them or if they try to leave, they will hurt them or their families. They'll keep the victim quiet by threats of deportation or threats of law enforcement action towards them or their families. Or in some cases, the trafficker may be fraudulent. They'll tell the victim that they are sending the money that they're earning to their families for them, but instead they keep it. In any case, the victim will believe that they have no other choice but to continue working for that trafficker. So I travel quite often, and I've developed a habit of approaching a housekeeper. I'll request a second conditioner or a towel, basically because I want to try and start a conversation with them. Remember, this could be labor trafficking. Do you guys remember the nosy neighbor from Bewitched? Well, my husband, who is a police officer and hates me getting involved with this, lovingly calls me Gladys. Her name was Gladys Kravitz. She was the nosy neighbor. Anyway, I'll talk to the hotel person. I'll tell them how clean the room is, that they're doing a great job. I ask if they like what they're doing and if they wanted to leave to go to school or to another job, could they? Well, back in August of 2019, I approached a housekeeper. We started chatting and I asked her where she was from. Then I asked her if she could leave that job anytime with her passport. She motioned for me to be quiet. She shook her head no. She did not have freedom of movement. This is trafficking. I asked her, do you need help? She shook her head yes. I asked if she wanted me to report or did she want to. She stated she did not feel safe calling the police and asked me to. I made a report and told them what happened. This is a very simple way for you to be involved in helping stop human trafficking. So how do we recognize a human trafficking situation? The National Human Trafficking Hotline has put together a comprehensive but not exhaustive list of common signs used to recognize a person that might be in a trafficking situation. Here are some of those warning signs. Employees living with the employer, poor living conditions, multiple people in cramped spaces, victims living and working on site where they work. Recently, one of the ladies I trained to become a victim advocate told me that her place of business has 2 separate but connected rooms, and that is down in the basement. One of them is a massage business called the Chinese Spa. Well, it had snowed one night, and she went early one morning to check to see if the pipes were frozen. She turned on the light and saw that there were people sleeping on mats on the cold floor. They were all packed in together, and they had one little heating item that they were using to keep the entire basement warm, and it was freezing down there. So she immediately went to the head lady and she said, human beings can't be treated like this, and she was really, really upset. So she went back up the stairs and she called me and we made a report to Homeland Security. By the time they got there, they had already moved. Now recently I did find the new location and I did turn that in, and they are being investigated. So a trafficking victim is often kept isolated to prevent them from getting help. Their activities are restricted. They're typically watched, escorted, or guarded by associates of the traffickers, which makes those associates traffickers. They may be coached to answer questions with a cover story about being a student or a tourist. They're not free to leave and come and go at will. They work excessively long or unusual hours. For example, the Chinese spa I just told you about, they don't close until midnight. It's hard to believe that that would be a legitimate business. Of course, now we know that it was not. So, a trafficking victim is often kept isolated. They're not allowed breaks. They suffer under unusual restrictions at work. They may tell you that they owe a very, very large debt and they're unable to pay it off. They can't tell you what the value is of the work that they do. They think they are paying for their transport to the United States. And after thinking that that's paid off, then they're told that they're paying for room and board. And it just goes on and on. So sometimes they won't even identify as a victim of trafficking. You might see high security measures that exist in their work or living location, like a blacked out or boarded up window, bars on the windows, barbed wire, security cameras. The Chinese spa has brown paper that covers their plate glass front windows. And you would think that you would want people to see inside your business so that they would be interested in coming in, period. We've also seen victims that are fearful, anxious, depressed, very submissive, tense, nervous, paranoid. They might be afraid if you bring up law enforcement. And why would you think that? Maybe their country of origin has a corrupt law enforcement agencies and they don't trust law enforcement as a whole. They may show signs of poor hygiene, malnourishment, fatigue, and they're not free to leave or come and go at will. And they're basically unpaid, paid very little or paid only through tips. They may show signs of substance abuse or addiction. They may show signs of physical or sexual abuse, physical restraint, confinement, torture. They may have just few or maybe even no personal possessions at all. They're not in control of their money, their bank account, or their identification documents. And typically they're not allowed to speak for themselves. A third party may insist on being present and or translating. They'll show a lack of knowledge about where they're staying, even what city that they're living in. They share a scripted, confusing, or inconsistent story. These are only some of the possible indicators. So if something seems off for another reason, it's a good idea to report it as well. Remember, these signs can appear anywhere, in any context, whether it's someone you've known for years or even someone that you just met. So what do you need to know and do before you report? Well, because there's a safety component to this, you have to observe. Please ask yourself, will this put me or the victim in danger if I report it right now? Can I report it later and be safer? Trust your judgment, trust your gut. If a situation or an individual makes you uncomfortable, trust that feeling and remove yourself from the situation. Then, when it's safe, write down the location and circumstances, write down what made you think this might be related to human trafficking, and then report it when you can safely do so. When communicating with someone in a potential trafficking situation, please recognize that that person knows their situation best. It's necessary to honor their request to ensure their safety. Maintain open and non-judgmental communication. Ensure that they know they can reach out at any time and they can end the conversation if they need to. Try to speak in person if possible. If that's not possible, try and speak on the phone first instead of text or social media messaging, because of course someone else could see that. And then ask the person if they're alone. Use yes or no questions until they indicate it's safe to communicate more freely. If they are alone, try and establish some safety words for the future. One word to indicate it's safe to talk and that the person is alone, and one to indicate it's no longer safe to talk and the person in the situation would like to be done. Try to learn about their safety concerns, find out about reporting, shelters, counseling, legal services. If you notice one or more of the signs we talked about or other suspicious activity, it's very important to report what you've seen to the proper authorities. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is run by a nonprofit, and they're funded in part by the U.S. State Department. This is a 24/7 hotline, responds both to tips and reports of possible trafficking and victims themselves. So it's very easy for us to reason away what you saw or experienced, but honestly, if you just trust your gut reaction, it's better to report something that isn't actually trafficking than to avoid reporting when it actually is. So remember that you're the safe one in the scenario with the freedom to speak your mind. Trafficked victims are often dealing with the emotional, psychological, and or physical trauma. not to mention the financial or social manipulation. They are not in a place to, quote unquote, get out of the situation themselves. Plus, the effects of being trafficked can be severe and life-altering. Victims need help to get free and recover from the industry. And there's plenty of help out there in the form of government agencies and nonprofits. Your report can connect the dots between a victim and the help that they need. Ever since 9/11, we've heard if you see something, say something. Law enforcement cannot be everywhere, but we as an agency can help be their eyes and ears. We at TxDOT are one of the greatest assets in fighting against trafficking. So even though human trafficking does not require actual movement of a victim, it can. And TxDOT is doing our part by raising awareness that it could. We've put human trafficking posters at all of our travel information centers in the bathrooms for victims with a safe number tear-off, or they can use their phone to take a picture of the phone number and then call when they safely can. Most of our TxDOT vehicles have information cards called the Know, Watch, and Report. Has the red flags that I talked about on them. Our TxDOT heroes patrol I-35, MOPAC, US 183, and State Highway 71. Man, we are in the prime position to recognize the signs and use the help numbers. If we suspect human trafficking, we can do something about it. I'm concerned about a lot of things in this world. Climate change, my family's future, but human trafficking goes to the heart of my moral obligation. I'm an upstander, or a nosy Gladys, and I'm okay with that name. The difference between an upstander and a bystander is that a bystander sees what's going on and chooses to do nothing about it. An upstander sees something is bad and chooses to make the right choice and report it. So how do we help? Ask questions. Could some of the goods that I buy be made by child labor or forced labor? Get involved. Find ministries in your areas and get involved with on a local level. You can go to your rape crisis center and become a victim advocate and actually work with the victims. And look beneath the surface of our road crews. We need to have inspections of those workplaces. We need to ask questions. Make sure that workers know they have rights. Take action and empower yourself with knowledge. If you see something, say something if you suspect trafficking and you're in a safe place to report. You can call the top 2 numbers. This is for the Department of Homeland Security. You can also text HELP to Be Free, which is 233-733 at any time, or you can call 1-888-3737-888 anytime. You can go to the National Trafficking website and chat live with a representative. The advocates on the other end, they'll coordinate with the best resources for the situation. Local law enforcement if warranted, investigators, service provider partners. It's important to note you're not responsible for interpreting the situation that you're seeing completely. All you have to do is report what you see. The hotline advocates are professionals and they're trained to take it from there. The global movement starts with each of us, and together I believe we can end human trafficking. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lori Wagner, the Austin District Administration Manager. We hope that you feel more confident about your ability to spot the signs and to take action safely when it comes to reporting possible instances of human and labor trafficking. The Austin District is committed to this effort and has developed additional training resources for safety and tailgate meetings. Supervisors, be on the lookout for a follow-up email with instructions on where to locate training materials, a training schedule, and how to order placards and stickers. Thanks again for participating today.
We will have all TxDOT vehicles outfitted with that information and make sure all of you have those wallet cards handy. We are on the front lines. I would like to personally thank everyone for being here today and for actively listening to our presentations. Remember, it can happen to anyone, anytime, and anywhere. You serve as our eyes and ears when it comes to spotting and reporting trafficking on our roadways. Thank you for attending today's virtual event.